the host of the Kyle Kulinski show. Kyle Kulinski. Well, Kyle, welcome to Uncensored. We're trying to get you for a long time. Let's have a little chat with you before we get reaction from the panel. But why did the Democrats blow it so badly, and what do they do to avoid this happening again in 4 years?
I mean, the simple answer is that Kamala Harris kind of codes as a technocratic status quo manager, and Trump codes as a change agent. And so, I mean, to sum it up as simply as possible, voters just thought he's going to deliver more change, she's more of the same, and they broke for him.
Who would you like to see run the party now? I mean, what's the future of the Democrats looking like to you?
Jon Stewart. I've been pushing that since the day Trump won this time around, because what we need is, honestly, a controversial, charismatic celebrity might make all of the difference, but it's that mixed with Bernie Sanders' policies of actually delivering social democracy for people, raising their pay, getting them health care. I think that's the magic stew. And honestly, I think it's a shame that more people aren't talking about the controversial, charismatic celebrity portion of Trump being so successful, is that you can't keep the cameras off him. He's entertaining. Love him or hate him, you can't stop watching him. And so we need to sort of mirror that on the left. And I think the way of doing that is Jon Stewart.
I thought that was an excellent point by Kyle, and the first time I'd planned for us to kind of break in. What are your thoughts on that, Gavin?
Yeah, totally agree. I also think that Jon Stewart is kind of a throwback to like 2000s liberalism or leftism that a lot of people sort of miss. You know, people talk about some of the issues with the modern day left as far as communication, framing, optics, all that kind of stuff. But I think if you look back in that time period, like during the George Bush administration, obviously the Democratic Party was miserable. Their opposition was dog shit. Look at John Kerry, John Edwards, all these fools, right? But the actual lefties, people like Jon Stewart, people like Michael Moore, I think they really had it down as far as how to communicate with working class people, how to, you know, spread the message of solid leftist economic policies without getting dragged too much into the mire of the culture war. Jon Stewart obviously was never really known as an identitarian leftist. He was never known to be someone that would get into the culture war all that much. And I think to this day, he does a really good job of marrying genuine substance and good policy, good politics with a more controversial comedic edge that obviously Kyle Kulinski referenced that would be something kind of necessary to take down Trump.
100%. And the thing that Jon Stewart also possesses as a comedian, I don't think you have to be a comedian to possess this, but he has the ability to be like quick and have that, you know, I'm going to be rubber and you're going to be glue, right? So I can kind of retort really quickly. You have to have whatever that quality is, right? And I think that he was able to do that in a way that would defeat the culture war, or neutralize the culture war, right? Because he's not going to throw trans kids under the bus. Right. What he's going to do is he's going to humiliate you for out of all of the problems that are facing American people. You want to bully some kids in school who are playing field hockey. What the hell's the matter with you?
Yep. Plus, sometimes he'll say the quiet part out loud. He'll say what other people on the left or other people in liberal media are afraid to say. How many times have we referenced his hilarious joke on Colbert's show about the Wuhan coronavirus lab? I mean, that was hilarious, but not a lot of people were saying that at the time. And I think that normal people and even conservatives will appreciate that aspect of Jon Stewart, his honesty.
But I would add to that what Bill Maher's been warning for a long time to liberals.
Oh, God.
Speaking as a liberal himself. And I'm pretty much where he is politically, I think. I feel the same way. And I know
what
you've
a
been
confession.
keen to say, look, Kyle
he's like, oh, God, here we go.
But she's very much associated with a lot of those woke issues. She's certainly voted in line with a lot of the more progressive stuff, like allowing transgender athletes in women's sport and so on. So she's seen to be a progressive who then moved rapidly
He's not
to
taking
the
the
center
bait.
when she got the nomination, and it was all too much of a screech for people, probably on both sides. But this whole woke ideology, I don't mean the original woke ideology of raising awareness for racial and social injustice. I mean the way it's become a kind of new form of fascism, where the far left just basically want to cancel.
This is the guy who explicitly argued that it was incredulous, that it was beyond the pale to call Donald Trump a fascist. But you know who's really fascist? The mean people on Twitter, Gavin.
Shame and humiliate absolutely anybody who disagrees with them about anything. Do you accept that has become a problem, a stick to beat the party with, which actually really damages them electorally?
No, I think Kamala ran basically the platonic ideal of a non-woke Democratic campaign. She never mentioned race. She never mentioned gender. She never mentioned trans people. She never mentioned pronouns or Latinx or cancel culture. She repeatedly stressed that she was going to represent all Americans. She ran to the right on the issue of the border. She talked about owning a gun. She ran on freedom and patriotism. And so when you put all that stuff together, I simply don't know what people are talking about when they say she's
they're talking about her record. Hang on. They're talking about her record as vice president of the Biden administration, where they never stopped talking about this stuff for nearly 4 years. So you could pretend when you get the nomination, whoa, I'm a centrist and I'm a gun.
But do you think that Joe Biden even knows what a non-binary person is, Gavin?
Actually, that's hilarious because one of my very favorite Joe Biden moments ever is when some random person asked him, "Hey, Joe, how many genders are there?" And I think he said, "I don't know. I think 3."
So he does. Yeah, he's on board. He's woke Joe.
Yeah.
Dark Brandon rising.
Toting Rambo, by the way, as well, to all you Second Amendment people. But actually, if you judge her on what she said and did in 4 years, she was a progressive left person. And to pretend otherwise is to just ignore what went on in that period.
What I'm much more concerned about is not Democrats being woke or Democrats censoring speech. I'm much more concerned about Trump's record on those things. So, for example, Trump said he wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail. That's against the First Amendment. He sued CNN for $475 million for calling election denialism the big lie. Before he was president, he sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke. He said he wants to open up the libel laws. He called for jailing journalists who report on the Supreme Court abortion ruling early before the decision.
How many of those things did he do in his first term?
Pro-Palestine protesters.
How many of those things did he actually do in his first term? Because it seems to me another problem, and he does this brilliantly, by the way, with the left. He sucks you in because he just shoots them a hip and he says stuff that crosses his mind or whatever. And rather than pick him off on stuff he actually does, you all go completely nuts every time he opens his mouth and says something a bit crazy. And if I was advising the Democrats, I'd be like, stop doing this. You're literally playing into his trap every time you do this. Just pick him off. If you want pick him off on the stuff he actually does. Then you got a better chance.
All right, I'll do that. Here, ready? He gag ordered the EPA from telling the truth on climate change. That's deeply anti-free speech. He arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting. He did not pardon Assange. He did not pardon Snowden. He did not pardon Daniel Hale. He wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy the U.S. To deploy our own troops against George Floyd protesters. These are all things that are actually on the record, things he actually did. And the thing that I find incredibly frustrating is that nobody talks about it. Trump magically gets a pass for things he actually did.
He doesn't get
Democrats
a pass.
Get held to a super high standard.
Come on, he doesn't get a pass.
How many times have you heard people say those things I just told you?
Trump has had.
Wait.
Hang on. Let me answer you. Trump has had the most unrelentingly.
See, that's the thing. Kyle's going to get pissed off because he just absolutely dominated Piers wall to wall, just hung him. And Piers is like, well, hold on. You know, let me backpedal here.
Also, it's completely ridiculous to say that, that Trump is not held to a different standard. Of course he is. I'm old enough to remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president. Every single Republican in the country said that it was disqualifying that Hillary Clinton was under investigation at the time. Remember, for the email scandal, the FBI? Oh, it's disqualifying. How could you possibly vote for a presidential candidate that's under investigation? She could be in jail by the time inauguration happens. This is insane. How could you even entertain this? And of course, only to then turn around a couple, election cycles later. How many felonies does Donald Trump have? How many investigations is he under? They don't give a shit.
The Access Hollywood tape, his own confession. The Jeffrey Epstein thing with where he's on the record with Michael Wolff, the guy that wrote what was it, Fire and Fury, right? Where he's like, oh yeah, we were best friends. Trump has this thing where he wants to sleep with his friends' wives, so he'll get them on the phone and talk about how he has like great prostitutes and they should all come out and party, and then he'll also secretly have their wife on the phone, and then he'll use that as a way of her being vindictive, and he's just a nasty, evil guy, right? That would have been a career ender.
The hostile media from a mainstream media that is largely staffed by liberals. We know this because of the way they all go nuts when their paper wouldn't come out and endorse Kamala, and they all resign, so they reveal their true colors. Cable news the same, MSNBC, CNN, you can fire a harpoon around their newsrooms. And
Of course, he's not going to talk about Fox News, which had to argue in court that they weren't an actual news organization, that they were protected under satire and entertainment laws with their broadcasting because Tucker Carlson lied so brazenly and he committed such brazen slander that they were actually going to be punished for millions and millions of dollars. And in order to not have even greater punishment, they had to debase themselves, humiliate themselves, and confess that they were not a news organization. Funny how Pierce never brings that up. It's always MSNBC, CNN, which are obviously deeply problematic, but not exclusively uniquely problematic.
You wouldn't hit a conservative, right? So let's just get real about the way mainstream media is made up. I've worked in it, and there are very few conservatives, and that is part of the problem as well. And I just think that ultimately, if the Democrats are going to try and make themselves electable, they've got to move wholesale on now to a far more effective way of campaigning. And it can't just be every time Donald Trump speaks, mass hysteria, shaving your head, going on TikTok and posting videos of yourself screaming and saying you'll never have sex with a Trump supporter again. All this stuff is insane.
Oh, wow. Pierce's projection right there, everyone.
How about just telling the truth? Wait. How about just telling the truth? That's a radical idea, right? When was the last time you heard that Trump arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting? Who talked about that? Did CNN talk about that? Did MSNBC talk about that? Did you talk about that? Nobody talks about it. And the fact of the matter is Trump attacks Democrats 4 times as hard as they attack him.
Yeah.
So if anything, the lesson to take away is the opposite. Democrats should get more arrogant. They should get more aggressive, and they should tell the truth more.
Come on, Kyle. You know that would be utter suicide.
That's the truth.
You know what? You wouldn't be as good at it as he is because he does it with humor. You lot all do it with these incredibly straight-faced...
That's why he just said Jon Stewart was necessary.
Well, I'm outraged by absolutely everything faces. And it's like, if you all just chilled out a bit, have a bit of Kool-Aid,
No.
have a bit of a laugh.
That's why I said Jon Stewart.
Death by mockery. Well, actually, you're right. Jon Stewart gets exactly the right tone. On that, I agree with you.
That's right. Yeah.
We
agree. Yeah.
I agree.